Vogue magazine, where she oversees the magazine's website, video program, and social channels. Previously, she was the editor-in-chief of T, the New York Times style magazine, the fashion news feature director of Vogue, and the fashion director of New York Magazine. She's written for The Guardian, The Economist, The Atlantic Monthly, among other publications, and is a trustee of the Fashion Institute of Technology. Please join me in welcoming Sally Singer and Tom Beller.
Let's use these. We can be murmurous. We don't have to exert ourselves projecting. Well, I'm very excited to be here with Sally Singer for many reasons. But just to kick off, the number one reason really is I think of Sally as an unusual hybrid or a person whose interests span a range from fashion to literature. And she's perfectly positioned also now to bring those two sensibilities to bear in, I don't know, in our very modern world of publishing and technology and attention spans being shredded and how this all plays out. And so, which is to say, as the digital director of Vogue. So Sally, we have all sorts of ground to cover, ranging from literature to fashion to, I suppose, gossip, because there's some wedding, someone's getting married this weekend, I heard. And also just the mechanics of publishing in the modern age. So let me just begin by, and I should quickly add, both of us are eager to hear questions from you guys, so after we talk for a while, I'm going to throw it open to you. But to begin with, can I simply ask you to talk a little bit about what you're doing at Vogue and at specifically Vogue.com?
Sure. I mean, I have some visuals I can show you, but I don't want to waste a lot of time showing.
No, use your.
I should use. If you want visuals, but you can be like, yeah, I know that. I've seen that. Turn it off. It's totally fine to do. I was at American Vogue for 11 years overseeing fashion news, all the fashion writers, and also all of the coverage of arts and politics and houses and everything that falls under culture. And then I left and went to the New York Times. I worked with Tom quite a bit at the T at the New York Times. When I came back at the start of 2013, I came back to oversee the digital, I guess you'd say, evolution of the brand. And I can show you a little bit about, just here about how that went. So this is, when I came back, this is what Vogue.com looked like online. It was a kind of beautiful, composed expression with a lot of like behind the scenes of the fashion shoots of the print magazine.
So this is the before.
This was the before. This is what I came to. And it looks pretty good, but it's totally deadly in the world of the internet. Like this just does not, other than Rihanna, this just doesn't work. And then who we are now looks much more like this. Some of the players are exactly the same, but the way they're expressing themselves, the way we're presenting them is entirely different.
Could you go back to the before?
Maybe I can't. Sorry.
That's before.
That's before.
Oh, I see. So people are moving.
No, well, people are definitely moving.
Because I was having trouble with the shocking transition. I couldn't.
Well,
Were you shocked by that before and after? I just thought that was the second before.
People are, I would say that online, most of all, people are characters, they're not playing characters. I think one of the things people think about when they think about Vogue and print is you see actresses dressed up in the most fabulous gown representing as some version of a Hollywood star you've seen before. We all know these pictures. And that kind of elevation of people to a kind of dream state is not what works online. It's not what we do online. When we photograph a model, when we photograph a celebrity, they are exactly themselves. That is what we're trying to do. And if we're putting them in the context of a character, it's with a lot of humor and for a very specific reason.
So you're allowed to have them be stunning in front of photographed in front of the New Orleans Museum in this amazing, for example, tableau in the print publication, but you don't want to present them like that here.
Dead on arrival. I don't care. The other thing that we do online, I was going to show you, we 3 iterations of this. We photograph American women coast to coast without alteration of makeup or styling or anything. We photograph communities we're interested in, and this is something that is very different to what I think has happened in Vogue print before. Although Vogue does have a documentary impulse in print, the kind of space and the kind of terrain we can cover is completely different online. So this was last March, the communities we care about, and it's this is a project that started before the election of President Trump. I think we started it in the summer. We started in the summer, but what happened, and we were at Standing Rock when only The Guardian was there. We'd gone to Standing Rock to photograph the women tribal leaders. Probably by September, October, when Amy Goodman and from Democracy Now! Was arrested. What happened by the March when this came out after Trump was elected is all these pictures that we've been amassing had completely different meanings. So the women of East LA, who I was fascinated with because a lot of their makeup and styling comes from their grandmothers, had always been just completely fascinated by how they do it. And that looked, well, when we ran this, it was the beginning of the ICE raids in LA, so to go online and say these were American women was in itself a political act. And that particular piece of content, during Paris Fashion Week, at like the height of the Chanel show, was our single biggest piece of content for the entire week, most shared, most trafficked. So we know that doing this matters, and it's just intuitive to who we are. And again, this was the first time we did it. This is women shot on a military base, sorority sisters, a whole bunch of things. Next, salmon fishermen. We've done it a couple other times. For Pride, we did American Women Queer Nation. We shot women who identify as lesbian or queer throughout the country, all different ages, all different types. And then we just did one. I don't know what I'm clicking to, guys. Okay, sorry, go back. It's not going back. We just did one about women in transformation. So this was everyone from Agnes Gunn, who's a great patron of the arts, who is leading the charge for criminal justice reform, to something as fun as Demi Lovato, who did a make-under, and she took off all her makeup, her hair extensions, her nails. So transformations of all that. This is the woman who oversees the transformation of female characters at Marvel right now. She's responsible for all the new Marvel heroines who are Muslim or Black. They're phenomenal. The top women skateboarders in the country. All different things.
Did you refer to a make under?
We did. We really made Demi Lovato under. And then she went right back. I mean, we took off the hair extensions, we took off the nails, we took it all off. She looked adorable, and she never appeared in public that way. Not gonna happen. We do a lot around gun violence. This was 2 years ago, where we have people who are survivors of gun violence write their stories online, and we roll it out in the lead up to June 2nd, which is the National Gun Violence Day. This was Jenny Holzer doing the graphics. Last year we had Steve Powers do the graphics with the words from the text, and then again, these are all personal essays. We have quite a lot planned for this year, obviously, now that people maybe care a bit more. And then this is a recent thing we've done, and then I'll stop. This is a project we just released in February called Vogue Over 100. These were the 100 people that we find interesting around the world. And if you clicked on any box, you would go to what they do, and they're from everywhere. Literally from all corners of the globe. It's the people that my staff think are fascinating. Yeah.
No, please, I didn't mean to make you stop dead in a
that's
sentence. I was just trying to raise my hand to let you know I wanted to talk.
Okay, and then online, because how you do things online, how you make the product it can be as interesting as a product. So on your phone, it was a 4-way swipe, which seems so basic, but we've never done it before. It's quite hard to do, and that's how you would have interacted there and entered the stories. Okay, anyway, so that's a bit of what we get up to.
I'm very, help, I don't, help? I mean, I have things, I raised my hand.
Okay.
That's good. If we could pretend that we had the full screen, I'm curious to know, because unlike with a print magazine or a book, with this medium, you have so much immediate feedback on your end as to how readers or users are interacting. Would it be possible for you to guess at or to tell us which of these squares was the most clicked on?
I can tell if I can find it. Yeah, but I think it's 100. I don't think they're here. I can tell you, and just This is what they're called, I'm not making it up. It's Fecal Matter.
No.
Fecal Matter is a duo from Canada. They're from French Canadian. They have a kind of Lee Bowery type aesthetic. They're a couple, but I mean they're a couple. They might even be married, but it's very much like they're a they/them kind of non-binary pairing. I mean, and they dress as a way where when we put it up, their little clip on Instagram, they did some original photos for us. They didn't even do a video. I mean, it was, I don't know, 500,000 views like within the first hour. Fecal Matter was by far the most, farther than Dua Lipa, who is herself a major, major star. And we had a video of Dua Lipa, and Dua Lipa did not get the numbers of Fecal Matter. But we didn't do these people for numbers. Like, you don't do this for numbers. You do this because it's exciting. Like, so we had people send in their video. We would model. So I would have my team make a video about how you tell the story of your day, and they would send it out to certain of these people who, some of them have social media, some of them really don't. They do not all have followings. And then they would send in their video of their day wherever they are. There's a woman who is an artist who had done some illustrations for, I think, a Chloe bag, and she lives between Barcelona in a very enviable, like, super hipster cool existence, and Ahmedabad in India. And she would then take the little video that we done, she'd do her version of it, and then they'd send us back their video, and then we'd re-edit it and make something collaboratively. So as a lot of this was kind of user-generated content, but always through the prism of Vogue, it's fun to do.
Many places I want to go with this. What I said, what was the most clicked on, I was getting a little bit, you were saying, well, we didn't do this for, with an eye towards maximizing traffic. Well, my next question was going to be, would you know which was the least clicked on? And by extension, I wanted to ask, okay, you're not thinking explicitly in terms of search engine optimization and numbers, but since you have that information, surely that must create some kind of inform your thinking about what works and what doesn't work.
Well, I think that's okay. So I think you do that in different ways and at different times. I think for me, when we did this, it was my way of saying, at this moment, we don't know where the next thing is coming from. Fashion certainly doesn't know where the next thing is coming from, right? And oftentimes fashion, as it comes down the runway, you feel a bit tired. You're like, as designers produce more and more collections at an ever faster clip, they're often doing collections that are based slightly on the best sellers of the last collection. And we know those guys. Like when it was 2 seasons a year, we were like, ooh, surprise. And now it's like, okay, we're back for resort. It's a bit of this, a bit of that, right? And it's kind of just more, it's like fabulous when it's not just more clothes, but you start to get to a place where it's just more clothes. And that's not, we're better than that. The world is more interesting than that. And so I sort of want to challenge my team to be like, well, what looks interesting to you now? What looks shocking? What looks exciting? Like, we have like 6 women in here who all do crazy eye makeup for literally no apparent reason. Like, they just do like bright blue crazy eye makeup in all different ways we hadn't seen else. And that to me was fascinating. Like, let's just put up the women who do different, there's like at least 6 women who look exactly like Kim Kardashian. And they might come from like Bollywood, and they might come from Rabat. I don't know where they came from. They all look exactly like Kim Kardashian. So that to me was interesting. I was like, well, let's just look at the world. And if we put this up, we'll see what we get with it. It's certainly, for us, it's a different, ultimately, if you wanted to be super strategic, you're like, this is about authority. This is like saying, we can do this and no one else would bother doing this. And when we do it, it matters. Because we're Vogue. So if Vogue says fecal matter matters at that moment. Or it doesn't, but at least we did it. But
I think fecal matter is an evergreen.
Yeah. But you don't do it for like the cynical, there's so many other things you can do. If I do a makeover of Demi Lovato, I know Demi Lovato has a lot of followers online. Like, we know what we're doing there. We didn't just transform anyone who wore some bizarre denim chaps to an event.
I'm glad you came back to that.
Needed a change.
Because the phrase, we did a make under, I'm interested to know within, with you and Anna and the culture of Vogue and the culture of Condé Nast, which, as an aside, I find probably unhealthily the culture of magazine publishing rather interesting. If I may share just a personal anecdote briefly. Sally and all the Condé Nast publications, which now include the New Yorker, are situated in the Freedom Tower, which is where the World Trade Center used to be, which is really pretty cold architecturally and in terms of the temperature. In fact, it's just a cold place. Previously, they'd been in a kind of glass thing on 42nd Street. But previous to that, they'd been in this address 350 Madison Avenue, and that was the heyday of Joan Didion's time at Vogue, or when Sylvia Plath was an intern at Mademoiselle, and which was a Condé Nast publication. And this is just a long, you have to take a break because I'm just excited to be sharing this very poignant anecdote with you all. I published a short story in Mademoiselle. I was very proud of this, very distinguished literary tradition. The whole thing is down the tubes now, but I was proud at the time. And I had lunch with my editor, but I was also working as a bike messenger at the time because you only make so much money as a short story writer. And I had a delivery at 350 Madison. And if you're a bike messenger at 350 Madison, you had to come in the front door and go through the lobby to the back where there was a service elevator. And I was like, oh my God, and I sprinted through the thing thinking, please God, let me not bump into the editor and have lunch with tomorrow. And I'm very proud to have had these sort of colorful 350 Madison experiences, but I also think of this as a period of Condé Nast's monolithic authority, which it hasn't not lost, but for all kinds of reasons, it's changed and it's evolved. So when you talk about, oh, we did a make-under, I'm curious to know, to me that's the antithesis of what is in the pages of Vogue, which is not a makeover as in a reinvention, but, there's an aspirational, photographed in incredible ball gowns, incredible settings, incredible houses. Is this meant to soften that or work in juxtaposition to that or somehow in concert with it, or how is this very, very make-under or documentary, super real world ethos how does it play with what you see in the pages of the magazine?
Well, I think that I see it as in concert with, or in addition to what's in print. What's in print shouldn't be what works online, and what works in video shouldn't be what works in words. Like everything, and what works on Instagram probably isn't what's going to work on Pinterest. You have to make really specific content for every single place your brand is going to be printed. You just don't know what the front door is anymore to the experience of being in a brand like Vogue. So I guess I see it as an additional. I know that there's very little crossover between our print and our digital readers. I think a few years ago it was like 6%. So the people who are reading from print are reading in one way and having a very kind of monumental experience in one way. The people who are looking at us online, they may be looking at Vogue online, or they just may be looking at something somebody sent them via Facebook or Twitter or somewhere that's kind of exciting to them, and they don't even know it's Vogue. And I don't know if I care that they know it's Vogue. I just want them to like it, and then I want them to look at the next thing that gets fed up to them, and I want to be the person feeding the next thing to them. But I suspect that a lot of people who look at our content just based on the numbers, they're far too big. They're not coming from a homepage because no one is really accessing a website through a homepage anymore, unless you guys like that, but most people don't. And they're just getting there somehow. And it's very, very cool when they subscribe or they sign up to follow us on Instagram or follow us on YouTube, which is very important to a company right now. But I don't look at it that way. But obviously what works online is going to be very different to what works in print. Sometimes a print story is so monumental or so sort of special or so whatever that it does work online. I mean, recently we had a cover with Amal Clooney that was a kind of a reveal, and that story would do well online because it was a very beautiful long-form piece by Nathan Heller with very beautiful pictures, and there's just no one else had that story. So you had to read it on our site. You might read the highlights on 9 zillion other sites, but if you want to read the whole story, which 1 million people do, you had to come to our site. But I mean, I think about the Met site next, and the Met is something. Okay, this is something we just did at the Met. So the Met is a Vogue brand.
Rihanna being the Pope, that just happened.
So this just happened. So the Met is something that's going to be captured in a special print magazine that comes out in one way. It's captured in the pages of the print magazine. It's central to the experience of Vogue every year. But in the galleries, this is something we do online, and we run this first on Instagram. So it starts loading on Instagram as the gala is going on. So as people are eating dinner, these are already going up. They're filmed. We start filming at about 7, and by 9 they're on. And this year these had, I think on Friday it was 43 million views after the math in the first few days. So the scale of that is such that it's obviously not just, it's complementary to print book, because there's just never been that scale of Vogue before.
Well, this is like the Super Bowl of fashion. But yeah, since we're chatting about it, and I know that you're involved in staging this, I'm curious to know, is there a point in the evening when you start having a good time?
Me? It's a little tricky. That was when we were 32. I don't know. That's what it looked like on our site. The next day we put it all on the site.
I'm not going to get a time of day or night out of you out of this.
Oh, from when things started to look good for me, I think when Madonna got up there and performed, and then I was like, okay, it's nice coming to an end. And go to the after parties. The after parties are fun. The after parties are fun. I mean, we do certain things at the after party. Like we did a thing at there's 3 after parties this year. So the first one was the Versace one at the Mark, which you couldn't really get anyone into other than arrivals for photographers, because it was like super limited, 200 people, whatever, ish. And then the next one, Migos performed. And then the next one was one sponsored by Ballman at the Boom Boom Room, which was like the central clubhouse post-met. And that's a good, dancey, fun thing. But then there's the Rihanna one, which is the Up and Down. And we did at the one at the Standards, one at the Boom Boom Room, we did a thing where people did their makeup, touch-ups, and we filmed it in a bathroom. Because I'm always trying to do like things in bathrooms, and we can't do the bathroom anymore at the Met because Kylie Jenner took a selfie there last year and everyone was smoking and everyone got in trouble. So now I had to do the bathroom at the after party.
Sounds so high school, you know?
I know. But yeah, those are fun. It's fun. I mean, on the night of the Met, there's about there's probably 100 people making content in the basement for the website. We have very few people shooting in the actual event. You have like, I can't remember, Anna cuts the photographer list smaller and smaller every year, but the demand to have an ever bigger audience from those views. So you have to find ways to make content that's more specific and to be faster.
Let me ask you a question that somehow circles into your biography a little bit. Sally, at one point early in her career, was in the publishing world, worked for R. Strauss, and one of the most well-known writers from that publishing house, Tom Wolfe, just passed away. And we were talking a little bit about how Vogue was handling that, and it led me to thinking about Joan Didion, who is also like Sally. Well, I haven't mentioned this yet. Apparently, Sally, I'd like to share with you that Sally grew up in Oakland, California. So Joan Didion, also a child of California, and I think some of the work that I most value from Joan Didion is either directly about her experiences working at Vogue in this essay, Goodbye to All That, or some odd way implicitly incorporates some of that. And I'm wondering, in this world that you are discussing, the world of fashion and literature and media today, how a Joan Didion aspirant would function in that, because Didion was an editor and editorial assistant at Vogue magazine for a number of years.
Well, I think it functioned differently. So I have a woman she's now the op-ed editor of the LA Times, Abby Gear, but she worked at Vogue as the culture editor of the website, and she actually helped on there's a Joan Didion documentary that's out, and she actually worked a little bit on that, because she herself is a Californian, she's from San Diego, she identifies very strongly with Joan, and that's getting Grip Good and Done.
Many women do, by the way.
Right. But so for the website, so she's a culture editor of the website, and she had been at T with me, and when she was culture editor, in addition to posting the daily stories, now on the culture side, it's an awful lot about reproductive rights, which are very important to the to the mission of Vogue, which is what we care about. It's a lot of arts criticism. It's a lot of A lot of theater, because my boss just loves theater, specifically musical theater, a lot of tennis. It's a lot of different types of posts, right? And actually at that time it was also parties and weddings. We hadn't separated them off yet. So she was doing parties and all that sort of stuff too. But she, Abby, in the time she was at Vogue, she did a very long piece on the drought in California, and we got George Steinmetz to do, who's a Nat Geo person, to do these aerial views of Owens Lake and what had happened there and the devastation, the kind of beautiful to look at, but actually totally creepy devastation of California during the drought. She did a very long piece on the roots reggae revival that was going on in Jamaica, really positioning that as Jamaica's Arab Spring, when a different generation rose up and, in contrast to dancehall, found its culture through reggae, and she was with Chronics and all. And we do long form stories, long form for now, which is 3,000-4,000 words, some 5,000 words, but with audio, with video, with photographer. We send down a skeleton crew, but we can make so much more, and we can position it in such a different way. And I really do encourage the people who work on the digital side to write to their strengths, to do exactly the things that they want to do. Another woman, Julia Balsenthal, did a very long form piece about all the women lawyers of the ACLU, again, at the time of the ongoing immigration and DACA issues. And it was probably 7,000. It's more space than she would have ever gotten in print, and better photographs. Not better, but different photographs, and different video, and different audio. So it's about how you can conceive of a project and then how you find the right audience for it, how you take it into the world and you find the biggest audience for it. So I think there's a lot of space to do great journalism, but you have to carve that space out while you're also looking, because this is the trick of working online. You're thinking about what's going on at 4 p.m. everywhere in the world at all times. You're thinking about what's going on at noon. You're thinking about the story that you didn't think you were going to do at 8 a.m, because by 11 you have to do that story. I mean, we don't really...
What changed between 8 and 11?
You don't know. We don't write to trending topics, but they're very aware of them, the staff. I mean, there's not a mission, they don't have to. That's a very kind of BuzzFeed way of going about it, and you end up, it's a kind of lose-lose situation, but...
What are the two loses?
Well, you lose because you lose authority, and you lose because unless you're like BuzzFeed and Daily Mail, you're not going to get the audience. They're going to be fast redder. They're going to do it. They're going to find those 9 pictures of someone leaving or wherever. Before it's just and you're going to feel terrible. You're going to feel awful.
That's good. That's what I was really looking for. That's the loss that really counts.
But they are. But the trick on the internet is you've got to intervene in daily life at exactly the moment. You got to present the right story at the right time to get people to look at it. And what you want to do is want to have the right story that you totally, freakily believe in. I had one writer who's just she was obsessed with Eastern Europe, but now she's not. Now it's all Central Asia. Eastern Europe's over for her. It's all Central Asia. So she is really convinced that somewhere in Central, she is finding, the next future of fashion and style, because she's just done with the Russians. And
I so love this, yeah. Someone comes bursting into the Vogue office and goes, Eastern Europe, done.
Yeah,
There's this other place.
It's just
called Central Asia.
Yeah. Well, in terms of where she's finding inspiration in street style, because she's the person who does the Eastern European, fashion. We send her there for those shows. And she speaks Russian, and she's just over it. But she has to find, when she does all of her reports, we've got to publish them at the right time of day, in the right way, with the right headline, to get as many people looking at them as possible. There's nothing precious about that. That's how you do it.
I'm so interested to hear about what I would call a kind of social engagement with social issues and integrating those thoughts and concerns into Vogue material. I want to just allude to the show that's up right now, and in which Alexander McQueen plays an important role. And I was looking recently at photographs of his clothes and aphoristic remarks he made, and I was, it's from a time that is now past, and I was particularly zooming in on his sort of ascent, this sort of 90s era ascent, and I was remembering a remark by a guy named Nev Wakefield around the time in the mid-90s when Kate Moss was photographed looking like a junkie, basically. It was the junkie
Heroin chic
moment. He said something like, he made some remark about how, was a kind of glamorizing of looking, unhealthiness became, dare I say, in vogue. And looking McQueen's sort of zeitgeist, I was revisited a little bit of that. And I'm just curious to know, when I brought him up to you, you had a kind of interestingly intense response to the subject.
Oh, he's just a controversial figure. I mean, but he's a great designer. I mean, fantastic designer. Astonishing designer. There's a new documentary about Lee McQueen that's out. I guess it's going to be, it was a try back in. I think it's going for a release. And it's the people who are interviewed in it. It's a lot of his families interviewed and his sisters in it a lot. And it's not, a lot of his key collaborators are not interviewed for it for some reason. Sarah Burton's not in it. But it's a fantastic look at his young life when he was young. And at one point it makes me, which I had not actually considered for him as he got more and more depressed, is that after he sort of had the liposuction and had this much more polished, demeanor, much more in the years of the Tom Ford owned McQueen after the group bought it, that he lost who he was. He lost who he was to himself in that. I had never really thought about it that way. That's actually when a lot of, they make the point, I don't know if it's true or not. I mean, he obviously had issues.
I was reading about his funeral and how all of his professional acquaintances and colleagues and collaborators were sort of on one side of the aisle and his family was on the other. And I thought that was interesting. I wondered if you...
You mean the big thing in St. Paul's? Which is massive.
Were you there?
Yeah. It is massive. I guess I think that I don't talk about him much. Probably I guess what saddens me most of all is that for a lot of us in the fashion business, particularly after the death of his mother, he was very erratic. He had cut himself off from a lot of people who'd been close to him a long time. And I think in the fashion world at times, it's glamorous to be nuts, and it's okay to be nuts. Like, I think probably in Hollywood it's the same. I don't know, I work in Hollywood, but there is a thing in the fashion world where people can be badly behaved, and it's part of the idea of being glamorous. I think certain models you just mentioned have had that around them as well. It's like, Naomi doesn't turn up, oh, it's so exciting, or, Kate, ooh, she's pregnant, ooh, it's so exciting. And actually, I think in the case of Lee, there were a lot of warning signs there, and people just didn't. People talked about the fact that he cut off different people and was very erratic, but people didn't intervene. People didn't, if your best friend is having a psychiatric break or is seriously bipolar, you try to intervene, right? And I think in fashion, particularly as people become more powerful and their power lies in their genius, and genius is allowed to be nuts, nobody ever says, wait, this is scary, this is dangerous, or no one maybe can do it well enough. That's what I felt at the time. I was like, this wasn't exactly a surprise, but why didn't, and that I felt was a terrible shame, because I think he was, amazing.
Well,
and amazing and fragile in a lot of ways. He could be super mean, but he was super fragile.
well, that's intense. I don't mean to provoke you into this personal thing, but I'm glad that I asked. I have one more question I want to ask Sally, and then if any of you are interested, I'd like to offer you guys a chance to ask her some questions.
There's a ton of videos I can show you. Maybe more technically fashion videos.
I don't mean to, well, if you've got a ton of videos, maybe we should see one before I throw this open.
Well, do you have another question?
I have one more
Okay,
question,
go for the
which
question.
vaguely connects to
Okay.
what I thought you just alluded to, which is it's interesting actually, you used the word authority earlier in connection with Vogue, which made complete sense, and I feel like you evoked it a little bit just now when you're talking about someone who's sort of on top of the world and how people interact with that. And I guess the idea of power in fashion. So my question to you, which actually maybe has nothing to do with anything I just said, but maybe. I remember the first time I saw a fashion show, and I stood there for a while thinking like, this is really strange and kind of silly. And then at some point, the music, and suddenly it was like I got very excited. Wow, this is amazing. I got all excited. And then afterwards I felt a little embarrassed about it, but I understood the whole point. And I'm wondering if you have a memory of your own first encounter with that sort of fashion show catwalk moment.
I don't know if I have the first encounter, but I definitely remember that when I was at British Vogue briefly in the 90s for a couple of years, and I was at British Vogue around the time the Queen did some of those really amazing shows in the 90s, and a publicist named Pierre Rouget used to work the door, and I could never get. I was in standing always.
Okay, wait, sorry.
At British Vogue.
The Queen, you just said.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I had to cycle through. The Queen of England doesn't do shows. Freddie Mercury was already dead.
Yeah.
What is she talking about? Alexander McQueen.
Okay, Alexander McQueen. And I remember I would have to kind of like literally like crawl under people to get past the door to try to get through to get into the show, to sort of hover with the British Vogue people and sit down. And I do think that the robotic paint gun show with Shalom was quite a big deal when I saw it, because I knew that I was probably, actually by then I was supposed to be there, but I still felt like I was supposed to be there, and it felt kind of great.
You guys know this, but just forgive me, fill me in. What exactly was the robotic paint gun
It's
show?
the end, if anyone's seen McQueen, it's the end where Shalom is in this white dress and these two robotic paint guns start spraying paint on her. She's being painted yellow and black, and she's spinning on this wheel in the middle of the stage. It was like a great finale. It was like a model. These two weird robotic living programs were spraying paint all over the dress and all over her. It's kind of an amazing moment.
What year was that?
Somewhere in the late 90s. It was 90s. But I do remember thinking, this is very special. I'm very glad I got to see this. It's funny because it used to be the case, and I don't really feel it is the same, but I was always trained with the idea that Vogue doesn't stand. So no matter what's happening, someone's retiring, it's the greatest show ever, it's the last, Yves Saint Laurent show, Vogue never stood up. Like, you're not allowed to sit there and clap while the rest of the audience is like standing ovation and freaking out, right?
What was behind that?
I don't know. I was just always told when I went to British Vogue doesn't stand. So like, I don't know, just like.
We won't stand for this.
So now, like, I sort of wait to see what the band is going to stand. Like, can we all stand up? Like, like big, moments in fashion where people like are exiting or entering or whatever.
For example.
I should be able to think of one. I think like the end of Saint Laurent was probably a big one. Sure. There's got to be others that I can think of that are
I don't mean to put you on the
big
spot.
ones. I mean, there's so many exits right now. Like, everyone keeps quitting their job, so.
Who's quitting? Is there availabilities? What does that mean? Who's quitting?
No, there's this new trend in fashion designers taking what I call demi-retirements, where they're like, I'm done. Like Phoebe Philo, she's done. Like, she's not doing Celine anymore. So now Eddie's going to do Celine, but he took a break too after Saint Laurent. It's like, I'm done. They've all been paid so much they can do that. Hello. But it's this kind of idea like, I'm so valuable, I'm just marinating off the market, they're gonna bring me back. Yeah, people just like quit.
Let's all try that.
It's different than the people get fired, but the other people just kind of quit for a while. And they bide their time, they sit on the side. It's good, I think it makes sense because they're burnt out, because it's really hard now to be a designer because you're not designing two ready-to-wear shows or two ready-to-wear, two couture. You're designing like 12 collections a year and probably some other capsule collections. And you're probably running a social media empire. And you're, it's impossible. It's impossible right now. It's impossible to be that inspired. It's like a hamster wheel, right? So I get it. But it does mean that there are a lot of like momentous exits, which everybody knows is coming, and everyone has to clap through, and everyone has to go.
So I didn't get whether Anna, in fact, ever stands.
We occasionally stand. I grown to stand now.
Can we get on record what the first sighting of the stand was?
I can't remember.
And the first stood for who?
I should be able to remember. I can't remember.
I love that Vogue won't stand. We won't stand for it.
But I do know that when it's ever one of those shows and it's coming to the end, I have that really uncomfortable feeling like I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Like, what are you supposed to do? It's like you just wish you could leave quietly to the side. Like, write a note later and say that was brilliant. Go weep by yourself somewhere else.
Do any of you have questions you'd like to offer Sally Singer right here in the front?
So this has been fascinating. So I have been up to this point all about the print magazine. I'm totally going to Vogue.com now. This is wonderful. Thank you so much. I would like to ask, we've heard a little bit about your career, but I'd like to ask, how did you get started? What did you major in college? What advice would you give to young girls who are interested in being editor?
There's not a lot you could learn from what I studied American history, and I went to graduate school American Studies, but I thought I'd be a professor. I didn't know anyone who worked at magazines. I didn't do internships, didn't have any connection with magazines, and but I did sewed all my own clothes, and then I went to a book publishing house, which was more aligned with my academic interests, and then I went to a literary magazine. I was the London Review of Books, and again, more aligned to my academic interests, but also fiction. And then somewhere then I wrote a piece for British Vogue, and they offered me a job, and I thought, oh, I should do that.
What was the piece about?
Oh my God, it's terrible. It's about Jane McInerney.
Wow.
Terrible book, too.
So find a debauched, soon-to-be disreputable author who has many people who disdain them. And
I always say this. I mean, I don't think anyone's going to have, like, I wouldn't have made it had, one, when I first came to New York after grad school, I couldn't get a job at Condé Nast. Couldn't pass the typing test. Couldn't get hired by anyone. Like, nobody, like, I didn't have the clothes, I didn't have the look, I didn't have any of it. I probably had to be in England to get on, because you had to, you know, in England when I was at British Vogue, people just, like, dressed in, you know, nightgowns or something. I did, the American editors were really, I wouldn't have been able to do it. Like, I don't know. But I think I also would have been bored. I mean, I don't see this on the website, but I see in print still, that, and it's ending. Like, these jobs are going, but the jobs where you sit as an assistant, they're boring. I mean, you have access, you sort of have a sight line to something that's interesting, but by the time you come of age, that job won't be there. It'll be gone, you know? So I wouldn't have even, at the best of times, waited it out, nor been promoted anyway. I kind of had to enter as a grown-up and just stay as a grown-up. So I don't know how I don't think I'm a good person to learn from.
I'm just so distressed at the thought that some young person's going to show up to a job interview in a nightgown.
But I'd say it's different. I mean, I think the people who work for me on the website are different. I have some people who come in at 21, 22. Like the guy who did those Met videos, and I have other videos from him in this thing. He was my photo researcher 2 years ago, sitting in the basement of the Met. I mean, he's a kid, like not a kid. He's in his 20s, but you know, he was a photo researcher. He has a really good Instagram account. He has a really good sense of how to capture movement. He's really good with an iPhone. I've got a whole bunch of people who are really good with iPhones, you know, and they make a lot of the content that we run, and they, you know, our budgets are small, so they're the people we hire. We don't hire outside firms to make, you know, these videos and stuff that we do. We work with the people we know, and we try to find money to make things, you know. So I think right now there's a lot of opportunity, but it's probably not because you aspire to be at a magazine or aspire to be a publication. You should aspire to want to make things, and you should be able to tell stories any which way. You should be able to tell stories in GIFs. You should be able to tell stories in long form. You should just be able to tell a lot of stories and be able to do all of the component parts of it. You know, film with your iPhone, edit on your phone, write the thing, do the audio, make the podcast. Like, the more you can do to tell the stories that you do, the better. That's what everyone's looking for. And then you won't want to work for me. You'll actually want to start your own agency, and you'll ask me to hire you and pay you like $6,000 per week. No, honestly, I'm joking. And you'll get the Revlon deal, and I won't. I mean, I see it. It's really a moment to be a creator. There's so much interest in what people could do, and but for those who do work for me, they get every day they get to make things. Every single day they get to write things, make things, put stuff up, and every day they get better at it. And that is different from what like edit assistants used to be, where like if you waited a year, you might get to edit the letters page, sort of.
Right. Vogue has the best contributing. The little profiles about the contributors are so beautifully well done, but it's because it's a real plum to get to write a 250-word profile for that page. Nicest thing that's ever been written about me was on that goddamn page. We have Sally, you be in charge.